The whole idea behind the series that I'm doing is a practical way of spirituality and spiritual transformation simplified. So, in other words, to demystify what the mystics have known and worked with for thousands of years. And I believe that in this time we're in now, this is the time we do need to understand what has been going on for centuries, but bring it into a modern context. And so that is the purpose of this series. And today, the Ascension journey is what I'm going to be addressing, because Ascension has become a buzzword, let's say, in the New Age and spiritual circles these days. And there's a lot of theories around it, and a lot of even myths, shall we say, misunderstandings and so on, because it's something that's within the consciousness of the masses, and yet we're not too sure yet exactly what it is. Well, I would like to share what I know about it, and this is why I say that what I work with myself in my own life and share is based on some experiences, multidimensional experiences that I've been very privileged to have. Back in the 1980s, I had been working on my spiritual self, my spiritual journey for 20 years by then, not solidly, but once I got into meditation as being a necessary key, then of course things started happening. So a series of wonderful experiences started in the 80s. In one deep meditation, where I was again probably asking, well, what am I here for? What is it all about? How can I serve? Two light beings came and escorted me to what I would call the higher dimensions or the higher spheres. And we came to this realm of light, and as we approached, I saw this amazing light. You really can't describe it in words. It was just so intense. And as I was led closer, I saw that it was actually made up of a whole multitude of light beings. Incredible. You really couldn't define them. They were so brilliant. And around and in front of them were other circles of light beings of slightly lesser intensity. This first experience, I was completely overcome, and I just sort of gazed in awe. And I was prompted to look down to my soul body, my consciousness body, which is what I was traveling in, and I noticed it was grey, very heavy and dense. And I later was told that this is your soul identity. This represents all that we have accrued over many lifetimes that needs purifying. Anyway, I carried on with my trainings. I had initiations, inner trainings, outer challenges, initiations, as of course we all do. And this wonderful experience was repeated, probably some years apart, actually, in some cases. It lasted for over a period of about 10 years, going there a few times. And each time it was as though I was led a little bit closer to the very outer circle, until on one occasion the circle actually opened and I was invited to join in. And I did recognize in this outer circle some of the ascended masters that we're familiar with, in particular Saint Germain. And again, as I looked down at my soul identity, my soul body, I noticed by then it was a lot lighter, a lot whiter, shall we say. In the sacred text, it's called the seamless white garment. That is what we're aiming for. It's just a metaphor for your inner light. And on the last time, it was as though I was welcomed in and told that, along with others there, of course, not just myself, we had volunteered in this particular incarnation to help understand it for ourselves, but of course for others. And on each of these occasions, it was as though knowledge and insights and understandings were downloaded, so that when I came back into my consciousness, normal 3D consciousness, I had this amazing knowledge and material that I hadn't got before. And in particular, Saint Germain, and he gave me back in about 1993 the basic Ascension principles, shall we call them, which was the start of my current service. So at that time, through this 10-year period, I actually, although I had been doing a lot of inner work and meditating, I hadn't actually done a great deal of study at that time. And so these experiences I didn't understand. I didn't even try to explain them. I wrote them in my journal. They're all documented and dated. I just went for the experience, as I say, and the understandings that came from it. And it was only in later years, as I started studying the ancient texts, the ancient wisdom, the Tree of Life and Kabbalah, the Order of Melchizedek work, and so on, that I gradually found that there was a whole vocabulary attached to it. And this, of course, was not new, naturally. It was something that other people and have experienced and passed on. So the reason I'm sharing this, which I've actually never done before, it's the first time I have actually shared this part of my journey, is because what I'm going to be talking about today is related to this and comes from the basis of actually being shown what is ascension, what is it we're actually aiming for, what does it look like, how do we know when we actually have ascended, and how do we get there? All of these questions. So I was shown this. I actually was given this feeling, and I want to share that through the teachings that I do. So that's the reason I'm talking about it today. It seems quite strange to actually share it. But okay, so this whole thing about ascension, what is it? Well, in my understanding now, based on that, it is a process. It is not something that's just going to happen to us or can be done to us. As I say, now I have a basic understanding of what it is and how we get there, which I will share more with you because I think it's something that is very relevant for this time that we're in. So, the myths and misunderstandings around it, of course, abound, as with any concept. So I would just like to explain how I understand it and realize that obviously there are many paths and many ways, but we do need a foundation of understanding and know what we're heading for, and it always helps to know how to get there. So first of all, to understand ascension, let's look at the word. What does it actually mean? Well, the word to ascend means to rise or to go up. Ascension means advancement, progress, moving forward. Now you'll notice that all of these are verbs of action. And that means, therefore, the action has to be done by me, by you, by the person who is wanting to achieve this advancement. No one can do progress or ascension for us. No event can do it for us. It's something that we are consciously participating in. So even when it was hoped by a lot of people that the December the 12th date, December 2012 date was going to perhaps be Ascension Day, well, think about it. Had that, obviously it wasn't going to happen, and it didn't. What about all the billions of souls incarnated on the planet right now who have no knowledge of this, and even if they did, wouldn't actually want to participate for whatever reason? What about the free will that each one of us has got? So obviously a mass thing like that wouldn't be feasible in my opinion. So, okay, what actually is it? It's a journey. So I'm sort of labeling these as fact one, fact two, just to differentiate them so you can see and keep up with me on this little journey of sharing. It's a journey. Okay, we say life's a journey from cradle to grave. And it is the same for our soul, except our soul journey, of course, comes from our many incarnations. Why do we do that? Well, it's a big question. But my understanding is that we chose from our higher self level to experience co-creating and experiencing in this third dimension, which, as we all know, is the densest and the most challenging, and therefore we can make the most spiritual progress. Okay, so if it's a journey, what is common to every journey? It has a destination, and it also has a goal or a reason for doing the journey. So the destination of ascension, what is it we're ascending to? What is it we're advancing or progressing or rising up to? Well, I have discussed this in the first two of my series about the higher self, the I am over self, or I am presence, and the second one was on the soul. But I just will recap very briefly now for those who maybe haven't heard that, just so they know where I'm coming from on this. So it's my understanding that from the Godhead was emanated what we call our I am presence, from the Aya Asha Aya, which is I am that I am, the Godhead. And all the I am presences, our higher selves, it goes, in my understanding, by many names. I am, over self, original, pre-existent light body, and so forth. And then this higher self, our higher divine, it's our divine self, our true self, our authentic self, wanted to, or volunteered, shall we say, some people say this is an experiment on the earth, feels like it at times, volunteered to come here to experience. Well, the higher self, or the I am presence, obviously is in a sphere which is untouched by anything we do here, fortunately, and doesn't come down into this frequency. So it emanated, every I am presence emanated like a reflection, a lower counterpart, which we call soul. And in the soul is carried the divine spark, that divine essence from our higher self. And then the soul, for each lifetime that we come here, clothed itself in the appropriate body, came into the appropriate setting and family and so on, karmically, for that next life experience. You could say it's a little bit like an actor who goes from play to play, or I like to call our lives here soap operas, because indeed when you look at them, isn't that what they tend to be? And so for each soap opera or each play, we require a different set of costumes and a different setting, a different country, a different culture, and so on. So the soul's going through, journeying one after another, gaining experience, gaining learning, and waking up to, oh, well, this isn't what it's all about, this 3D dimension. There's a lot more. And that's the awakening journey, of course, that I'm sure all of us who are joining together right now are very aware of. Okay, so it's as though, with all these soul experiences, the soul has become, I won't use the word polluted, but weighed down with a lot of negativity and mistakes we've made, karma, if you wish to call it that, and so forth, in our experiencing. And so it's like the soul has gone into lockdown. By that I mean, ready for the next lifetime, it has to come back to work on things that have been started and not finished before, or balanced, or healed, or let go. I call it unfinished soul business very quickly. So we continue to do this until we come to the point where a lot of us are now, that we're waking up and saying, there must be an end to this journey, surely. I have done it so many repeated experiences, when do I ever reach the destination? And it's once you come to that sort of feeling that you start thinking, okay, so what is it going to take to get me to my destination? And it doesn't mean that even when we've achieved the destination of ascending out of the soul will ascend into reunification with the light body, its higher counterpart, it doesn't mean that you won't come back to the earth if you choose, but that's the difference. We will have choice because we are clear of all energetic attachments, psychic attachments that the soul had. We've purified it enough, and then we can choose. Do we want to come back and serve? The difference being that if we do that, we will come back with full awareness. Won't that be wonderful? Because it's often crossed my mind in the early days, well, why do I keep forgetting? I've learned things in past lives, and then I forget it all, come back, and have to try and remember it and carry on from there. And for some lifetimes, it takes a whole lifetime to remember, or not at all. So the difference is, and this is what any ascended master will do, is to come back because they choose to, with full knowledge, with full mastery, in order to serve, pure and simply. Or the choice is we don't have to come back. We can then explore the higher frequencies, the higher worlds, as it says in the scriptures, the house of many mansions. Okay, so that's the premise that I worked from and was shown and given a glimpse of. That when we move into this higher frequency of light, back into our pre-existent light body, it's a whole completely different experience, which you really can't put into words too easily. Okay, so how do we do all of this? What's going to help us get there perhaps more directly? Like any journey, you can say, my destination is so on. But you can choose how to get there. You can do the scenic route, you can do the stop and start route, or take a long time, maybe by boat, or you can fly direct. And I think for many of us now in this time of shifting consciousness, we are saying, I think I'd like to take the direct route. We've done our sightseeing. We've done all of our exploring. Now let's move. So, okay, what I would like to share with you is some of the understandings that I was given that help us do that. And so I have called them the 10 Master Keys or Ascension Principles. Okay, so another fact, it's action. You remember I said at the beginning the whole word ascension can only be described through verbs, through action words. Okay, so what do we need? Well, we need first, as I said, a goal, and we have to have the desire to do it. Because if we're not motivated enough, as we all know, the busy 3D world is just going to take over and we get involved in our little soap opera dramas. Another thing that is required, of course, is action and effort. Just as on the earth plane, when we're studying or learning a skill, it takes effort, it takes focus. Well, spiritual journey and progress is no different. It involves mastery. What does that mean? Well, as you again will appreciate, I know all of us are doing the same thing. We have a mind, the Eastern scriptures call it the monkey mind, that tends to race around all over the place and we're not in control of until we decide to master it and be very careful about what we're thinking and speaking. And we have an emotional body, desires and feelings, which again can rule us, as we well know. Addictions, of course, is an extreme version, but there are many subtle levels in between. So mastery of our self on its many multi-levels is absolutely essential. And these 10 keys that I was given, as I say, back in the early 90s, give us broad principles that everybody is actually working on. And these principles have laws that are attached to them. We call them the universal laws. I think probably everybody's heard of the law of attraction. That's just one in many. Okay, how do I know this? What proof do we have that I can share with you that makes this have a real foundation, as it has for me? Well, who are our examples? The most well-known, of course, is Jesus, who ascended. It says in the scriptures, he died and then he ascended after 3.5 days. All the ascended masters who have come at different times, they are ascended because they move beyond the physical plane. So if we look at them and say, well, what was it they demonstrated in their lives and what did they come to teach us? We've got a pretty good reference point to come from. And they demonstrated what I call universal characteristics. And I just jotted a few down here. An ascended master, and this is what we're aiming for, don't forget, although we haven't made it yet, they are what is called our elder brothers and sisters. They lived in a permanent, notice the word permanent, state of love and compassion. Now, we all know we can go into a state of love and compassion, but we also know it's very easy then to flip out again through whatever's happening in the world or in our life. And, of course, love is the highest vibration on this planet that we are working towards. They always exhibited a complete sense of oneness, a oneness with all life forms, with all humanity, but all life, a sense of unity. And this is not surprising because unity consciousness is the one law of the order of Melchizedek. And all the masters are priests of the order of Melchizedek, which is, as though you could say, sort of a governing consciousness, an overlighting umbrella energy that coordinates, shall we say, all the different help that we've had throughout the centuries. It actually says in the scriptures that Jesus was a high priest of the order of Melchizedek. They always exhibited their whole life is as one of service, selfless service. And that was the reason for them coming here to help us. And also they exhibited humility. And this is a good one in this day and age where, you know, we work on our self-esteem and so on, which is very good, and having confidence. But there's a line between that and true humility. For example, if you look at any of their teachings, any of the texts, you will see they never called themselves masters. They demonstrated it. And there's a delightful quote from the Ascended Master Lao Tzu, which really succinctly, I think, puts it. Those who know it, tell it not. Those who tell it, know it not. And I think that's something just to bear always in the back of our minds. They also live totally from higher consciousness and awareness at all times, being fully aware of the universal laws and working always with them and in harmony with them. They live by their divine power, inner power of their divine self. Even Jesus in the Bible said, "Of myself I can do nothing. It is the source, the divine part of me that does the work." And of course they had no karma because they didn't have to come back. Karma brings us back, as you know. But once you've reached the ascended state, your karma is finished. Or in order to reach the ascended state, we do have to work on clearing our karmic relationships and debts, shall we call them. They also demonstrated amazing self-mastery and self-mastery powers. And that included what we call, at the moment, miracles. Again, that's well documented, loaves and fishes and so forth. But the other masters, Saint Germain in particular, was able to manifest whatever was required at any moment. The other thing the Ascended Masters that we can look to had in common was they didn't have a physical body as we have now, a dense 3D flesh and blood body. They may have had it, of course, before they ascended, naturally, but once you have achieved that reunification of your soul with your I am pre-existent body of light, then you don't need a physical body, even if you want to come down back into, lower your frequency and come back into this dimension. It looks real, it looks like an ordinary body, but again, it had characteristics which made it very obvious that it wasn't a heavy, dense flesh and blood body. So what is this fifth dimensional, because it is fifth dimensional, light body? Okay, here are some characteristics, and for those who you may meet who say, oh, I've already ascended, well, okay, I would suggest very sweetly sort of asking them to demonstrate these. I'm being naughty here, but you know what I mean. Okay, what are the characteristics of having achieved this fifth dimensional light body? Okay, you could ask somebody, are you able to walk through the walls? Because yes, you can. If you've got a fifth dimensional body, even though you've emanated it into and brought it into the 3D for whatever reason, you still know and don't have that flesh and blood density. Can you walk on water? Yes, you can once you've ascended. You can appear and disappear from third dimensional sight just with a flick of your fingers. I haven't met anybody yet can do these. I'd love to do so, but maybe we will in the future. When you're in this fifth dimensional light body form, even though you look, as I say, human, you don't need food or water or drink at all, because obviously the flesh and blood, as flesh and blood body does, the light body doesn't. Of course, it never ages, never gets sick again, and never dies. Saint Germain was well documented, for example. He was one of the last masters that we know of who came into incarnation to serve. And he was documented, and this is with historical documents, not by hearsay. This was actually in historical documents of Europe, of the courts in the time of Louis XV, for example. And he was seen over a period of at least 300 years in all different parts of the world. He could speak any language he chose, but he always looked the same. He always looked roughly about 40, in perfect health and vigor and so forth. But he was never seen to eat. He never joined in meals with people, which is, again, one of the things I mentioned just now. An ascended master or an ascended being can travel by thought alone. You just think where you want to go and you're there. Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? Especially if you've got this long traveling distance from here in New Zealand. We have probably the furthest to go if we want to reach many of the main continents in the world. You can heal others, of course, with a touch. Jesus showed that very, very clearly. You can manifest anything instantly, just like that. And it comes into actually a physical, dense form. That's the interesting thing, because once you have reached this ascended state, you understand the laws, I guess science would call them quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and so forth. And so you just work through them, with them, and transcend them where necessary. So I think you can get the picture that it's quite a different state to be in than we're currently in. Okay, so of course that brings us now, how are we going to do all of this? Well, as with all things, it's a step-by-step process. So if we relate it to an ascension journey, which is how I like to relate it, it means that maybe there's a map somewhere. And what I've been gifted with is a way to help people find their own map. It's like a soul map, because the soul has a plan for each lifetime in coordination with your higher self. What is it you want to achieve this time? And so it has like a map, if you like, of, well, this is what we're going to work on in this next incarnation. And I have been given ways to share with people where they can find their own map, even reading some of the key points are encrypted in your date of birth if you're reading it not purely from a numerological viewpoint, but from a higher intelligence viewpoint. So these principles I've mentioned before give us like signposts or intermediary destinations along the way, and they can help us go from point to point. I always think that our spiritual journey is a little bit like a spiritual treasure hunt. You have to go and find one clue. When you open it, that will give you the instructions where to go for the next clue, and so forth. It's an ongoing thing. One thing builds, of course, on another. Nothing is separate, as we well know. And I'd just like to mention here that Ascension, the focus on Ascension that we have now, is not for our body to ascend. Now, yes, there have been cases where this has occurred. In other words, not going through the death process. Elihu from the Bible, or Elijah, was seen to ascend. Enoch did, and there have been records of other very evolved beings being able to do this, but this is not the norm. Basically, it couldn't happen anyway unless your soul, as I mentioned earlier, was purified enough and free of the third dimension in order to reunite with your higher self or your pre-existent light body. So basically what we're focusing on, as I said before, are these soul lessons. It's as though we've got gates on the soul that lock us down on this journey, and as we go through the journey, we need to unlock these gates, and then we can throw open the door to our fifth dimensional higher self. So these are some of the principles, and I'm going to share this in part 2. I'll be a little bit more specific and take you through some one or two processes that will help you understand and start really working on some of these levels of purification, shall we call them. So that is why the name I've also been given is Keys, 10 Master Keys, because they do unlock what's been holding us down. And there are 10 main ones, but there are 2 extra ones, and they're the keys of Michael and Melchizedek. So that gives us 12, and then in many mystery schools of the past, it always was 12 plus 1. The plus 1 is your destination, your higher self, your goal. So I'm going to share more about that in part 2, but these are principles of divine love light. I use those words together, and the reason is that light is an emanation of divine love, and so to me it's love light. Then you have, of course, divine power, not the human ego power, but the divine power, and the divine wisdom, which we can learn to access, as I mentioned in my previous talk, through the Holy Spirit, the communicator, with our higher self and soul. So these keys are found in all sacred, not all of them, but 1 or 2 are found in all sacred texts around the world, East and West. This is some of the proof that I've spent years researching to make sure I had understood it correctly. They're found in the different scriptures, the different texts, in the different spiritual paths, the teachings of the different masters. For example, Jesus was very focused on teaching us love and forgiveness. I think that was his main message. The Buddha, for example, focused a lot on non-attachment and clearing karma. And so you'll find these different keys throughout, as I say, the world. So they're not man-made, they are basic foundations for all mystical and spiritual traditions. So I'm working this year to get these available online as a course, which will be an audio course along with PDF. I'm also being guided apparently to put it into a book form, so it will be ebook. Looks like I've got another busy year ahead. So if you're interested to know when these become available, always go to my website, which is www.ominternational, that's ominternational.co.nz. And if you want to join up for the newsletter there, of course, I post things on that telling people what's currently happening. So I look forward to meeting with you again on part 2, and I'd just like to finish today, and thank you very much for joining me, with a blessing in the original divine language of light. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Savayot. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Savayot. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Savayot. We are one and we are blessed. Thank you.